Marriage is meant to be a partnership built on love, trust, and respect. But when one spouse is narcissistic, the relationship becomes a battlefield where only one person's needs matter. A narcissistic husband does not see his wife as an equal partner, but as someone to control, manipulate, and diminish. Today, we will explore 10 disturbing ways he treats his wife, not to create fear, but to bring awareness and healing, because once we name the patterns, we can start breaking free from them. At the beginning of the relationship, everything feels magical. He showers her with affection, attention, and compliments. It's as if he's studied her soul and knows exactly what she's been yearning to hear. He makes her feel special, chosen, and seen in ways she may never have experienced before. People looking from the outside might even say, she's so lucky to have a man who loves her like that. But here's the catch, that love comes with invisible strings attached. Over time, she notices the shift. The affection that once felt unconditional now starts to carry a price. Every gesture of kindness begins to feel like a loan that must be repaid. He might say things like, after everything I do for you, this is how you treat me, or if you really loved me, you'd do what I'm asking. What began as warmth and devotion slowly transforms into a system of control. This is one of the most disturbing aspects of a narcissistic husband's behavior. He doesn't withdraw love all at once. Instead, he sprinkles just enough affection to keep her hooked, while simultaneously using that affection as leverage. It's a cycle of reward and punishment disguised as romance. Imagine a wife waking up one morning, making breakfast, and hoping her husband will smile at her the way he used to. But instead, he criticizes the eggs, complains about the coffee, and sulks at the table. She asks what's wrong, but and he stays distant. Hours later, after she's apologized, even though she doesn't know what for, he suddenly softens, hugs her, and says, "You know I love you, right?" This pattern creates emotional whiplash. She begins to associate peace, affection, and closeness with submission. She learns that in order to earn his love, she must comply, agree, and suppress her own needs. The cruelty here lies in the confusion it creates. On one hand, he tells her she's his everything. On the other, he withholds kindness whenever she doesn't meet his unspoken expectations. She's left wondering, does he love me? Am I the problem? Maybe if I just try harder, he'll treat me the way he used to. This is the silent trap of emotional manipulation. Because it feels like love at times, it's easy to mistake it for love all the time. And when she questions it, he often turns the blame back on her. I'm only this way because you push me. I wouldn't have to act like this if you just listened. What makes this tactic so damaging is that it erodes her sense of self. Love should be a safe space, a place of comfort and affirmation. But here, love becomes unpredictable, conditional, and unsafe. She never knows when the next criticism will come or when the next bit of affection will be handed out. This uncertainty keeps her emotionally trapped. It's like gambling. She keeps hoping for the jackpot moment of affection, the smile, the hug, the words that remind her of the man she once fell in love with. And every time she gets that fleeting taste of tenderness, she convinces herself to stay. But the truth is, this isn't love. This is manipulation wrapped in the costume of love. Real love doesn't make you beg for approval. Real love doesn't keep score. Real love doesn't demand that you trade in your identity for a morsel of affection. When a woman begins to recognize emotional manipulation for what it is, she starts reclaiming her power. She can begin saying, no, I don't have to prove my love by losing myself. She learns that true intimacy is rooted in respect, empathy, and reciprocity, not I. If emotional manipulation is the hook, gaslighting is the cage. It's one of the most chilling tactics a narcissistic husband uses because it doesn't just attack what you do. It attacks what you believe is real. Gaslighting is the systematic attempt to make someone doubt their own memory, perception, and judgment. And when it happens inside a marriage, it slowly dismantles a woman's inner compass. Picture this. A wife clearly remembers a conversation they had last week. He told her he didn't want to attend her family gathering. She remembers where they were sitting, what he was wearing, even the way he crossed his arms. But when she brings it up, he denies it flatly. "I never said that. You must be imagining things." At first, she brushes it off. Maybe she misunderstood. But then it happens again and again. He says something hurtful in anger, but when she repeats it back to him later, he scoffs. "You're so dramatic. I never said that. Stop making things up." Each denial chips away at her confidence. She starts wondering, am I remembering wrong? Maybe I overreacted. Maybe I am too sensitive. That's the exact goal of gaslighting, to make her stop trusting her own mind and instead lean on his version of reality. What makes gaslighting so dangerous is its subtlety. It doesn't always come in the form of outright denial. Sometimes it's mockery. "You're crazy if you think that happened." "Wow, you really have a wild imagination, Vasa. Why are you always twisting my words?" Other times, it's disguised as concern. "Honey, I think you're too stressed. You're not remembering things clearly. You should really relax. Your anxiety makes you see things that aren't there." This blend of denial, ridicule, and false concern leaves her spinning. The line between truth and distortion blurs until she feels like she can't trust her own mind anymore. The long-term effect of GA. Slighting is devastating. A woman who once felt strong, intelligent, and grounded begins to shrink. She hesitates before speaking, second-guesses her instincts, and becomes dependent on his version of events. It's like living in a house where the furniture is constantly being rearranged, but every time she mentions it, he swears nothing has changed. And because gaslighting is invisible to outsiders, it adds another layer of pain. Friends and family may not see it. To them, he seems reasonable, charming, even caring. So when she confides in them, she may hear responses like, "I'm sure he didn't mean it that way," or "maybe you're overthinking." Their well-meaning words unknowingly reinforce the prison he's building around her. Gaslighting is not just about control. It's about erasing a woman's trust in herself. When you don't trust your own memory, your own judgment, or your own emotions, you lose your ability to stand up for yourself. You become easier to control because you start believing, maybe I really am the problem. But here's the truth. Gaslighting is not a reflection of her memory, her intelligence, or her emotional stability. It is a deliberate strategy. It's psychological warfare designed to destabilize her so he can remain in power. The most heartbreaking part is when she begins to silence herself. She stops bringing up things that hurt her because she's tired of being told she's wrong. She stops expressing her needs because it always ends in her apologizing. Eventually, she stops trusting her own voice. But here's what I want every woman to remember. If your reality is constantly being denied, if your feelings are always minimized, if you find yourself apologizing just for remembering something differently, this is not miscommunication, this is gaslighting. And the antidote to gaslighting is truth. Truth-telling even when it's messy. Truth-telling even if it means keeping a journal to track conversations. Truth-telling even if it means finding one safe person who will listen and say, "I believe you." Because once you reclaim your truth, money is never just money in a relationship. It represents freedom, choices, and the ability to build a life on your own terms. When a narcissistic husband controls the finances, he isn't just managing a budget, he is holding the keys to his wife's independence. And that is exactly the point. At first, it might not even look like control. He frames it as responsibility. "Don't worry about the bills, I'll take care of everything." Or, "You're not good with numbers, let me handle the money." It sounds protective, even generous. But slowly the lines blur. Access to accounts is denied. Purchases must be justified. And what seemed like care quietly transforms into captivity. For many women, this shift happens so subtly that they don't see it until it's too late. She wants to buy something small, a dress, a book, a coffee with a friend, but instead of it being her decision, it becomes a negotiation. He questions her choices, makes her feel guilty, or outright denies her the freedom to spend. He may say things like, "Do you really need that? Why waste money on yourself? I work hard for this money. You should respect that." Over time, she begins to hesitate before buying anything. She weighs every choice against his reaction. What should have been her freedom, choosing how to spend her own life, shrinks into fear of his disapproval. Financial control isn't only about restricting spending, it often goes deeper. Some narcissistic husbands forbid their wives from working, convincing them it's because they deserve to be taken care of. On the surface, that may sound loving, but beneath it lies a darker truth. If she doesn't earn her own money, she doesn't have her own power. And without power, she becomes completely dependent on him. This dependency is intentional because when she has no financial independence, leaving becomes almost impossible. How can she walk away if she doesn't have access to money for rent, food, or transportation? He knows this, and he uses it as a silent weapon to keep her trapped. Even when she does work, financial control can still dominate the marriage. He might demand access to her income, dictate how it's spent, or minimize her contribution. That's not real money compared to what I make. Her financial effort is diminished, her independence erased. She is made to feel like a guest in her own life. What makes this form of control so cruel is its invisibility. Unlike shouting or name-calling, financial abuse isn't always obvious to outsiders. From the outside, people might see a husband providing for his wife. They might even envy her, thinking, "She's so lucky, she doesn't have to worry about money." But they don't see the strings attached. They don't see the way she has to ask for permission just to live. The psychological toll is immense. She begins to equate her worth with what she can or cannot buy. She feels like a child in her own home, stripped of adult autonomy. The constant dependence gnaws at her sense of dignity. And perhaps most painfully, she loses the ability to dream. Because how can you dream about a future when you don't even control your present? But here's the truth. Financial control is not love, responsibility, or protection. It is abuse. It is a deliberate strategy to shrink her world until she forgets she ever had the right to live freely. Recognizing this pattern is the first step toward breaking it. Sometimes it means secretly saving small amounts of money. Sometimes it means reaching out to trusted friends, family, or organizations that can help. And sometimes it simply begins with reclaiming the belief, I deserve to make choices about my own life. Because true partnership with money doesn't look like control. It looks like transparency, respect, and shared power. It looks like two people making decisions together, not one holding the other hostage. A woman's financial freedom is not just about dollars in a bank account. It's about her right to exist as a full human. And here's why it matters so deeply. Friends and family are not just extras in life. They are lifelines. They remind us of who we were before the manipulation, and they hold up the truth when someone tries to twist it. They give us perspective when our world has been shrunk to the size of one man's control. When a narcissistic husband isolates his wife, he is not just taking away people, he is taking away her anchors. But once she begins to rebuild those connections, even quietly, she starts to remember her strength. And with each reminder, she loosens his grip on her. Isolation may feel like the end of freedom, but in truth, it's only the interruption of it. The heart always remembers where it belongs, and once she starts reaching out again, the bars of that cage begin to break. One of the most exhausting experiences of living with a narcissistic husband is the relentless stream of criticism. It's not just the big, obvious insults. It's the steady drip of small jabs, side comments, and dismissive remarks that accumulate over time. They wear down his wife's spirit like water eroding stone. At first, it may seem like teasing. Maybe he jokes about how she cooks, the way she drives, or the clothes she wears. She laughs it off because that's what he expects and tells herself it's just his sense of humor. But soon the jokes don't feel funny anymore. They sting, and instead of laughter, they leave behind self-doubt. The criticism begins to touch every corner of her life, the way she looks. You're really going to wear that? The way she speaks? You sound ridiculous when you say things like that. Even the way she exists. You're too sensitive. You're not enough. You'll never get it right. Nothing is ever good enough. If she does something well, he finds a flaw. If she tries something new, he mocks it. If she expresses joy, he finds a way to dim it. Over Tim, she learns that no matter what she does, it will never meet his invisible standard. This constant devaluation doesn't just hurt, it reshapes her identity. She begins to internalize his voice. Even when he isn't around, she hears him in her mind. Don't mess this up. Don't embarrass yourself. Don't expect too much. His criticism becomes her inner critic. The cruelty of this is that it strips her of one of life's most vital elements, self-confidence. Where once she may have been bold, creative, and expressive, she now hesitates, second guesses, and hides. She learns to play small, not because she wants to, but because it feels safer than risking another blow. And here's the heartbreaking paradox. Even when she achieves something remarkable, he finds a way to diminish it. If she gets a promotion, he might sneer, "That's not a real achievement. They probably just felt sorry for you." If she receives a compliment, he might shrug, "They don't really know you like I do." He cannot allow her to feel proud because pride is power, and power threatens his control. To outsiders, these comments may sound trivial, but when you live in an environment of constant criticism, it changes the way you see yourself. Imagine being told every day in countless little ways that you're not enough. Eventually, you start to believe it. And that's the point. His criticism is not about honesty or helping her improve. It's about control. By tearing her down, he ensures she doesn't believe she can stand on her own. He keeps her tethered to him, convinced that she is lucky he puts up with her. The effects ripple outward. She may stop pursuing passions, hobbies, or friendships because she doesn't feel worthy. She may lose her spark, her laughter, her confidence, and perhaps most painfully, she may stop recognizing the woman she used to be. But here's the truth. Criticism that comes without kindness, respect, or love is not feedback, it's abuse. Constructive feedback builds. Constant criticism destroys. One nourishes growth, the other ensures silence. For a woman in this situation, what makes the silent treatment so devastating is that it robs her of the most basic human need, connection. We are wired for belonging, for recognition, for the assurance that our voices matter. When a narcissistic husband denies his wife that basic acknowledgement, he strikes at the very core of her humanity. Over time, she may begin to police herself to avoid setting him off. She may stop sharing her feelings, her needs, or her opinions because she knows they could be met with silence instead of support. She shrinks her world down, not because she wants to, but because silence has taught her that her words carry consequences. And here's the heartbreaking irony. Even though silence is meant to punish, she often longs for his attention during it. She tells herself, if he would just talk to me, everything would be okay again. That longing is exactly what he counts on. The silent treatment becomes a leash, one he can tighten any time she dares to step outside his control. But here's the truth she must eventually recognize. His silence doesn't mean she is unworthy of being heard. His refusal to acknowledge her doesn't erase her voice, her feelings, or her worth. Silence may feel like erasure, but it is not truth. Healing from this kind of emotional abuse requires relearning the meaning of silence. Silence does not have to mean punishment. Silence can be chosen, sacred, restorative. It can be a space where she reconnects with herself rather than a void where she waits for his approval. The first step is reclaiming her own voice. speaking it even if no one listens, writing her truth in a journal, whispering it to a trusted friend, or even saying it aloud in an empty room. Her words matter whether or not he acknowledges them. The second step is recognizing that his silence says more about him than about her. It is not a reflection of her value, but of his fear. Fear of losing control, fear of being challenged, fear of seeing her strength. And the third step is learning to sit in silence without fear, to transform what was once a tool of punishment into a practice of empowerment. Instead of shrinking in the face of his silence, she can expand into her own. She can learn to listen inward, to hear the voice that has been silenced for far too long, her own. When we step back and look at these disturbing ways a narcissistic husband treats his wife, control, criticism, manipulation, silence, financial abuse, and more, we begin to see a painful pattern. It is not about love. It is not about partnership. It is about power. For the woman inside this kind of marriage, the damage is slow, invisible at first, and deeply corrosive. Her laughter quiets. Her confidence fades. Her identity begins to slip away under the weight of someone else's cruelty. And yet, her worth remains untouched. Because here's the truth. No matter how small he tries to make her, she is not small. No matter how often he tells her she isn't enough, she is already more than enough. And no matter how loud his criticism or how cold his silence, he cannot erase the light that lives inside her. The journey forward isn't easy. It takes courage to see the patterns for what they are. It takes strength to stand tall in the face of manipulation. And it takes hope to rebuild after years of devaluation. But healing is possible, freedom is possible, joy is possible. And to every woman who has lived this reality, hear this clearly. Your voice matters, your story matters, and you matter. You are not defined by how a narcissistic husband treats you. You are defined by your resilience, your bravery, and your unwavering worth.